Hello everyone, this is the story of what if Naruto warps Hinata's reality. Summary. After being disowned from the Hyuga mansion and chased out of the village by mobs, Hinata walked around the forest, crying. That's when she has stumbled upon a boy named Toshiro Hitsugaya. A boy who has no memories of his past about the Soul Society, being a Captain Shinigami, and his friends. Of course he still has his personality but was grateful to Hinata when she took care of him when he was injured. They soon became close friends to one another and liked each other's company. Years later their feelings to one another grew but trouble started to form when they became genin. Truths and secrets were revealed about Hinata. Soon Hitsugaya's past came back to bring him back. Will Hinata's and Hitsugaya's relationship stay strong or be torn apart? Meeting the Shinigami in the snow. 7 years ago a beautiful yet vicious ice, water dragon attacked Konoha. No one really knows why it attacked. The Yondaimi's only choice to defeat the dragon, Isu Tsubasa, was to seal it in a newborn baby. The only newborn was Hinata Hyuga. It pained the Yondaimi to make the young baby to suffer such a burden. But knew there was no other way. He only hopes that his son will be alright and be friends with Hinata. The Yondaimi went to the battlefield after summoning Gamabunta. After battling sometime with Isu Tsubasa, the Yondaimi performed Fuinjutsu Shiki Fujin, demonic soul sealing jutsu. Using that jutsu summoned the Shinigami, sacrificing himself by asking the Shinigami to seal Isu Tsubasa inside Hinata. The sealing became a success. Everyone was grateful but mourned about their fourth Hokage. After the sealing, the Sandaime found Hinata with the seal visible on her stomach. He soon noticed her eyes were more lavender-colored and a bit cat slit in the middle. Word spread quickly about the dragon being sealed inside Hinata. Many demanded for her death but the Sandaime defended her and said she was the jailer of Isu Tsubasa, not the dragon itself. Hiashi didn't mind still having the child, thinking she'll become a formidable force for the Hyuga clan. Even so the village still hated the girl, thinking she was the dragon itself. The Sandaime did everything he could to keep her safe. He soon made a rule to never tell her what's inside her or any of the new generation, or it will be death for their punishment. As the years go by, the older generation made sure to make the children to hate and despise her. Only a few saw her the jailer and a hero to Konoha. Hiashi made things difficult for the poor girl. He kept training her till she couldn't move. Hiashi was disappointed to find her weak and disgraceful despite having the monstrous dragon inside her. Hinata's mother was one of those who saw her as the jailer of Isu Tsubasa. She did everything she could to teach her love and to care for others. To Hinata she was everything she wanted to protect. After her training with her father, she trains again after her wounds healed. She kept training herself to prove everyone she wasn't weak and deserves respect like everyone else. She soon came AC Ross meeting Naruto, who too wanted to prove everyone that he's strong and to become Hokage. They soon became friends rather quickly. They both promised to train to get stronger and to protect those who were precious to them. Right when Hinata's sister, Hinabi, was born, her father disowned her, saying that she was no longer a Hyuga anymore. 7-year-old Hinata cried, feeling hurt, betrayed, and heartache. On her back was her backpack, filled with some clothes, first aid kit, and some medicine ointment. Hinata continued to cry harshly, but still managed to contain herself, saying that everything will be alright, promising to herself to get stronger. While walking around Konoha, people kept throwing nasty glares at her, which frightened the ex-heiress. After an hour of walking around, she felt a kunai flying past her cheek, leaving a scar on her cheek. Hinata turned around to see a huge mob full of drunk shinobis that are at least Chunin level. Soon enough civilians joined in and start beating the poor girl. After a while having so many beatings, she managed to find a gap from the mob. Once she manages to sweep past them, she quickly ran off. She has been running for 2 hours. Her breathing increased, gasping for air. Normally people will just collapse right about now, even to most shinobis, but Hinata has more stamina than even a Junin would have. Hinata was also desperate to get away from the mob. Ahead Hinata noticed the Konoha's gates. Not hesitating to leave, she immediately increased her pace, forgetting the only friend she's leaving behind. The mob stopped chasing after her. When they noticed her leaving the Konoha gates, much the girl's relief. She didn't like the way they looked at her. They were full of hatred, sorrow, and anger. Something she would never like to see. It still broke her heart when she heard a faint cheering from the mob behind. She couldn't help but cry the whole way. It felt so wrong. It ached so much inside her chest. She felt like she wasn't needed, that she shouldn't even exist. Even her own village hates and despises her just as much as her family does. But no matter how much they do, she still feels the need to protect them. She didn't see, or if they don't appreciate it, but she still hopes to get their attention. I hope that someday they will notice me for who I am. The temperature soon dropped dramatically when she went deeper inside the forest. Most would have been freezing, but to Hinata it felt so right. She couldn't explain it, but she has always loved cold temperature. She especially loves snow. It matched her pale skin. It kind of fit, considering the fact that her birthday is on December. Wind of snow started to dance around Hinata, as if leading her to something or someone. In a trance she followed. There she found a boy unconscious. Hinata immediately ran toward him. She noticed he was about the same age as her. She couldn't take her eyes off of him. He was about the same height as her, if not taller, and has height hair which tends to blend in the snow. He wore a long white garb with a black-colored hakama sp. A green sash around his shoulders held together by a round clip. On his back was a katana which could be about 120 centimeters long. But what Hinata mostly noticed about him was the blood covering over him and the snow. She nearly panicked, not knowing what to do. Take him away from the snow first. Then wrap him with the bandages and ointment you have in your backpack, child, said the voice in her head. The voice was nice and warm to Hinata. She didn't know why, but she feels like she knows the voice. Hinata trusted the voice for some reason, as if she knows that it was only trying to help her. Hinata carefully picked the boy up and wrapped his right arm over her shoulders. She really needs to place him down to somewhere warm and safe. The snow still continued to come down and the temperature continued to drop. The boy's wounds are deepening and the blood keeps goosing out. She's utterly worried for the boy. Where can I place him in? I need to take him somewhere warm. I need to find it fast. I don't think he can last long, Hinata thought worriedly. As if hearing her plea, the wind again danced around her and the boy. She noticed it was leading her to somewhere warm. Again she hears that soothing voice. Follow the wind. It's leading you to a safe place for the boy and yourself. Don't worry, child. I won't let anything happen to you or the boy, the voice reassured. Hinata mentally nods, and so she followed the wind around her and carefully carried the boy along. The wind led her toward a warm-looking cave. Once inside, Hinata carefully set him down for a while. She went through her backpack and found her sleeping bag. Before picked the boy up, she took off the sword off his back and set it down near the sleeping bag. Hinata then picked up the boy again, but gently so he wouldn't feel any more pain than he already is in. She carefully tucked him in the sleeping bag. He went back toward her backpack and took out the first aid kit and the ointments. Turning back toward the boy, Hinata blushed for what she's about to do. She took off his white garb and took the top of the hakama down. Hinata could definitely feel herself about to faint but remained conscious. She noticed how his chest well developed compared to other 7-year-old boys and thought he looked very handsome. Hinata blushed again, thinking that way. She shook her head. No, bad Hinata, you shouldn't be thinking this way. He's injured right now, so I should be treating his wounds, not admire his. Hinata blushed again. That silver-haired Ero Junin really has corrupted me in some way. When I see him again, I'm so going to burn that orange book of his, Hinata thought angrily. Meanwhile that Ero Junin shivered. He securely put his book away. Why do I have this feeling someone is out to get me and burn my precious book, the Junin thought nervously. Hinata sighed and carefully put the ointment on the boy's wounds while blushing the whole time. The boy groaned, feeling the pain of his wounds, but then sighed. The pain was gradually getting less painful. After putting the ointment on, she gently bandages his injuries. It took a while and hard work, but she managed to complete it. Hinata put the top of his hakama back on, then tucked him in. She then gently folded the white garb that the boy wore. It was still stained in blood, so she decided to clean it later. Hinata put the white garb inside her backpack. Hinata tucked on her big, baggy, ripped sweater tightly around her. Her clothes were still tattered, ripped, and covered with her own blood. She put some ointment on a few of her bruises and injuries. The temperature was still cold but became a bit warmer than last time. Hinata stayed up the whole night looking after the boy. She watched him the whole time. She sat down with her back on the cave's wall, brought her knees up toward her stomach and wrapped them with her arms. Her eyes became heavy later on. Hinata watched the boy with kindness and gentleness like she normally does with everyone else. I hope he'll be all right, was Hinata's last thought before sleep overcame her. The next morning the snow stopped and showed the warm sun up on the sky. The boy, who has been sleeping in Hinata's sleeping bag, slowly woke up. Where am I? The boy thought. The boy felt warm and safe for some reason. The boy reluctantly sat up. He looked around and found what he was looking for. He picked up his zanpakuto and sighed. Hiranmaru, you there? He asked. A low booming voice answered, yes. It took a while for your injuries to heal. That was one big gash you've gotten there from the hallow. The boy looked down and noticed his injuries were wrapped with bandages and very taken care of. The boy raised an eyebrow. Who healed my injuries? He asked to himself, not really expecting an answer. A low soft moan was heard to his right. He turned around and was a girl, who looked around 7 years old, sleeping on the floor. Who's the girl? The boy asked to Zanpakuto. She's the one who took care of your injuries. That girl is something, Hiranmaru said. She did. Isn't she young to be alone? The boy asked. Like you're one to talk, Hiranmaru said, amusingly. What are you talking about, Hiranmaru? The boy asked, coldly. He did not like the tone his Zanpakuto was using. He's having a real bad feeling. Hiranmaru smirked. Look for yourself, Hiranmaru said. An ice mirror was soon formed in front of the boy. He looked at himself and soon his eyes widened. Why do I look like a 7-year-old boy? Hiranmaru couldn't handle it anymore. He began to laugh hysterically. Haha. Haven't seen you, haha. Hiranmaru couldn't continue. He was laughing too much to finish. The boy gritted his teeth. The boy slowly calmed himself down but was still pissed off. Answer me, Hiranmaru. Why am I back being a 7-year-old? The boy asked coldly. Hiranmaru stopped laughing after a minute. I'm not really sure. The rubbed his temples feeling very irritated. Great. Just what I need, he thought sarcastically. A soft moan was soon heard, again. The boy turned around to the girl. She was starting to wake up. She slowly opened her eyes and then sat up. She cutely rubbed her eyes to adjust her surroundings. The boy found himself holding his breath when he noticed her eyes. They were so different. They were lavender with no pupils, but when he looked at them more carefully he noticed her eyes were cat slit in the middle. Hinata noticed the boy up and looked at him worriedly. Anyo, or okay? She asked. The boy nodded. He couldn't trust his voice right at the moment. Hiranmaru chuckled, finding this all too amusing. What's wrong, Hitsugaya? Are you finally interested in a girl? Nice choice, she really is cute, Hiranmaru teased. What are you talking about? I'm just surprised from her eyes, Hiranmaru, Hitsugaya said, angrily at his Zanpakuto. Anyo. Hitsugaya snapped out of it after hearing Hinata's voice. He noticed the girl tilt her head nervously. Or sure you're alright? Hinata stuttered, asked to Hitsugaya, worriedly. Hitsugaya nods, with his normal cold, expressionless face. Hinata sighed, relieved to know he was okay. Anyo. If it's okay may I ask what's your name? Hinata stuttered out nervously. Hitsugaya was surprised but answered anyway. Toshiro Hitsugaya. What's yours? He asked curiously. Right. My name is Hinata, she answered. Hitsugaya raised an eyebrow. You don't have a last name? He asked in a monotone voice. Hinata dropped her head, hiding her sad and cold eyes. Just remembering her father's betrayal makes Hinata feel angry and sad about it. No, I don't. That is, not anymore. Tears began to fall on her pink cheeks to the floor. Hinata cursed herself for being so weak, especially in front of a stranger. This did not go unnoticed. She's crying. Why? Hitsugaya wondered. He moved toward the shaky, crying girl slowly. He didn't know what to do. His face softened a little at the girl in front of him. He rubbed her cheeks, wiping her tears away. Hinata blushed at Hitsugaya's action. She looked up into his eyes. It was strange. Hitsugaya felt kinda exposed looking into those lavender, cat-slit eyes. Hitsugaya never felt this way before, he felt the need to protect her. He has never met a warm, frail, gentle, and kind person such as this girl. Her whole being says she was made out of innocence. When Hinata looked into those eyes, they were full of warmth and softness inside them. Just looking at them made her feel dizzy and weak. But there was sadness and confusion. As if one, daring who he was and the sadness meaning of his past life. She didn't know how she was able to know this, but she just does. She also noticed how he surrounds himself with barriers, not wanting anyone to notice his true feelings. For some reason it made her feel sad knowing this. Hinata noticed how close she was to him and blushed. She backed up a bit, her face still flushed from her cheeks. Voices were soon heard outside of the cave. They sounded as if they were looking for something or someone. She should be here, a voice said. Hinata immediately froze. Her whole body immediately stiffened and tensed up her muscles. She went deeper inside the cave, trying to hide herself. She knew immediately who were the voices. They were from her village. They were looking for her. Hinata felt fear build up inside her. Why do I have to be so weak? She thought angrily to herself. Hitsugaya noticed her actions and gave her a questioning look. The demon girl should be here. We all saw her coming here, said another voice. Hinata shivered in fear. I thought they were going to leave me alone. Hitsugaya noticed Hinata shivering. He carefully approached her. Hey, you okay? What's going on? Hitsugaya asked her. When she looked at him, he noticed fear and sadness in her eyes. Why is she scared and sad? Hitsugaya wondered. There's a cave up ahead. I think she's in there. Come on, let's kill the demon. There was cheering outside, chorusing. Kill the demon. Hinata felt horrified. Her whole body shook uncontrollably. Why? Why did they call me a demon? What did I do to them to hate me so much? She asked herself repeatedly. Hitsugaya didn't like how the mob outside were talking. He could actually feel their killing intent so clearly from there. He looked back and noticed Hinata shivering in fear. He could see new tears forming. Hitsugaya gritted his teeth with frustration. He didn't like how Hinata reacting, not one bit. Hitsugaya, you should take Hinata and get out of here. I'm getting the feeling that those voices are after the girl, Hirinmaru said. What? Explain. Hirinmaru, Hitsugaya ordered. There's no time. Take her and get out of there. Hirinmaru yelled out. Hitsuge nods. He could hear the mob coming closer. He set his zanpakuto on his back before he could go toward Hinata. He carefully picked her up, bridal style. Eep! Hinata squeaked, surprised. Hitsugaya picked up her backpack and sleeping bag to Hinata. She thanked Hitsugaya and held on to them. Hitsugaya then shunpo before the mob could even spot him. Hinata, you know where we should go? Hitsugaya asked, while shunpo from tree to tree. Hinata was amazed by Hitsugaya's speed that she almost didn't hear what he said. Hinata nods at Hitsugaya. We could go SSC the H Hokage, Hinata said. When she noticed him giving a questioning look, she said, Anyo, th the Hokage I is th the leader O of my village. Where is your village? Hitsugaya asked. It's up ahead, Hinata answered. Hitsugaya nods. Hold on tight, he soon took off. Hinata made sure to hold on, which Hitsugaya noticed how careful she was holding on to him. He couldn't understand it, but he felt very overprotective of her. He looked on ahead and went off, heading straight toward Konoha, not knowing what will await him that will change his life. Moving in with the cast-out dragon vessel. Does the village have to be far off? Hitsugaya thought angrily. He was darn tired and his wounds are starting to reopen. Not to mention he's carrying the girl in his arms, not that he mind. In fact, Hinata was really light to him. He really wants to rest but turned against it. So he shinpoed even faster, which was a bad thing. Hinata looked up at Hitsugaya worriedly. She could practically tell the boy was in pain from his wounds. She knew his wounds weren't fully healed when he woke up. Hinata kept blaming herself about this. Hinata carefully activated her Byakugan without any hand signs. Ever since she started to practice to activate her Byakugan, she could instantly activate it without getting exhausted or use the hand signs. That was the only thing her Fath Hiyashi-sama ever praised her of. Of course it wasn't enough. Hinata searched around the area and immediately recognized the Konoha gates weren't far from here. She felt very relieved, not for going back but for the boys' sake. Once they finally reached the Konoha gates they stopped in front of it. Hitsugaya looked at it with interest. Is this it? Hitsugaya asked. Hinata looked up from Hitsugaya's chest and saw the familiar-looking gates. She felt a bit depressed and full of dread looking at it. It didn't feel like home to her, not much. Hi, she answered. 2 Konoha guards soon walked towards them. Halt, state your purpose here, ordered the guard. I'm here to meet the Hokage, Hitsugaya icily said. The guards weren't affected by his cold, chilled voice because all their focus was on the girl in his arms. They noticed right away that it was Hinata. They both glared at the nervous girl with so much hatred and disgust. Hyuga-sama, what are you doing with this boy? The guard said, with no resp. At all when he used the suffix of her ex-name. Hinata flinched from his glare and voice, filled with venom inside it. Hitsugaya didn't like the way they were looking at her or their voice. He could practically feel her fear from them. He could detect so much hatred and disgust in their eyes. Why are they looking at her like that? Hitsugaya thought. He gripped Hinata more tightly and securely. Now, what seems to be the problem? They turned toward the voice. An old man walked out from the village gates with superiority and wisdom aura around him. He wears a long set of robes with a hat that is written, "Fire," on the top of his hat. Hokage-sama, the guards immediately bowed toward the old man. Hitsugaya blinked, looking unemotionally confused. He's the Hokage? He asked while looking down toward Hinata. Who simply nods. The Hokage looked toward Hitsugaya then to Hinata. He looked at her worriedly when he noticed her clothes were dirty, raggy, and filled with dry blood. Please follow me, children, he said. Kindly. The guards reluctantly backed away for Hitsugaya to pass with Hinata still in his arms. Hinata went deeper toward Hitsugaya's chest when she noticed the guards glare with killer intent in them. Why do they hate me? Hinata wondered sadly. She could feel new shed of tears spilling out of her eyes. She cursed herself for being so weak. Hitsuge noticed the new shed of tears coming down like the rain. He really didn't know why she's crying again. He mentally sighed with frustration. I really don't know what I gotten myself into. All his attention was now on the Hokage in front of him. I can see why he's called the leader of the village. His energy is huge. I never met an old man such as him and is still able to become so powerful. Hiranmaru sighed. What are you talking about, Hitsugaya? Remember, Yamato-sama is even older than this one and he's way more powerful than all of the captains. Hitsugaya raised an eyebrow. Yamato-sama, captains. What are you talking about, Hiranmaru? He asked to his Zanpakuto. Hiranmaru's eyes widened. Don't tell me that attack from the Hallow made the Gaki get amnesia. So far he knows that. He's not the age he is in and about me being his Zanpakuto, and about the Hallows. He probably forgotten about his past and about the Soul Society. This isn't good. If the other Soul Reapers confront him, he'll be extremely confused. Not to mention, offended in some way. Great. His friends will be extremely upset toward the Gaki, he thought. The Hokage led the 2 children in his office. Once inside, Hitsugaya looked down at Hinata and sighed. Hinata, we're in Hokage-sama's office, Hitsugaya said. Hinata looked up and noticed the familiar room. Sorry, Hitsugaya-san, Hinata apologized while getting off of him. She blushed furiously for being so close to a boy. She never been so close to a boy before besides her Ni-san. In fact, she actually liked being close to the white-haired boy. He was so warm and comfortable to be with. Hinata blushed again thinking like that. No, bad Hinata, stop thinking that way. I'm serious about getting that arrow Junin and burn that orange book of his. Hinata thought. The said Junin sneezed and shivered. The Junin looked around, worriedly. Someone's definitely out to get me and my precious book. I need to be more careful, Junin shivered from imagining what will become of him and his precious porn book. Hitsugaya was confused from Hinata's expression. First her face looked beet red like a tomato, then it turns into anger of vengeance. Weird. He just shrugs it off. The Hokage looked at the scene before him with amusement in his eyes. Well, now that you have settled in, may I ask why were you out of the village, Hinata? I'm sure your father must be worried about you, he looked at her worriedly. Hinata quickly stiffened from hearing her father being mentioned. She found herself feeling depressed when she remembered the betrayal she had felt towards her father. This depression let out a different, strong, and cold chakra leaking out. The Hokage looked at her even more worriedly. He knew that chakra is coming from the demon inside her. Isu Tsubasa. Hitsugaya felt the sudden change towards the fragile girl next to him. The atmosphere around her started to feel cold. The aura he's feeling is sort of similar to Hiranmaru's. He noticed Hinata's eyes looked kind of dead, sorrow, and hurt of betrayal. Nothing is hiding her emotions. On the outside he was emotionless, but in the inside he found himself feeling worried. That feeling made Hitsugaya confused. He just barely met her and yet he already feels the need to protect her. It was like he has already known her all of his life. The way she shivered, cried, and the feeling of depression of betrayal back from the cave till now made him not want her to feel that way. He found himself wanting to kill the person who did this to her. Hitsugaya mentally sighed in frustration. Why do I care about this girl so much? Arg, I hate feeling this confused. I don't even know the girl and yet. Hitsugaya sighed angrily in his head. Hiranmaru found this far too amusing. He chuckled softly. To think he cares for this girl without even realizing why. Hinata probably reminds Hitsugaya of Momo. Although I doubt it. This girl is far too different from Momo. She looks so fragile and innocent compared to Momo. I could feel the girl's presence full of purity than anyone I have known, Hiranmaru thought. Hinata looked down at her hand. As if they were the most interesting thing in the world. What should I do? Should I tell Hokage-sama about last night? What will happen to father? She thought sadly. That's when her father's words came back to her. As of right now you are no longer a Hyuga or my daughter. You will only be known as Hinata. Do not ever come back to this residence or you will die. You were never wanted here, only hated. You deserve to be alone and isolated. His words kept echoing in her head over and over again. It scarred the young girl deeply and she knew it will never heal. Not to mention that her mother is dead by giving birth to Hinabi. This tortured Hinata even more, along with the hatred from the villagers themselves. What should I do? Should I really tell him what happened? Hinata asked herself yet again. Soon a soothing, soft voice spoke up in her head. Tell him, Gaki. He will not hate you or think you are lying. He's a good man who saved you so far. Tell him, I'm sure he'll do something to help. Trust the old coot, the voice said, reassuringly. Hinata found herself feeling more calm and not as depressed. She took a deep, shaky breath. Hiyashi H. Hyuga-sama, or my father. K kicked Mmoo out of the Hyuga R residence. He s said I'm no longer Hyuga A anymore or his DD daughter, Hinata choked out. She felt hot liquid coming down on her cheeks. She was crying. Again. Oh, no. Why do I always cry so easily? Stop it. Hinata still felt her tears pouring down but much more furiously. I don't like this. Hiyashi was right. I'm so weak, she thought bitterly to herself. The Hokage's face hardened. That fool. Hiyashi, how could you do this to your own daughter? He thought angrily. He sighed. He's really too old for this. Hitsugaya felt himself stiffened. His eyes looked more colder as if you're in snow country itself. His fist shook angrily, wanting to beat the crap out of someone. He could actually feel his Ryatsu about to shoot out along with his spiritual pressure. He kept calming it down but it was difficult considering the fact he wants to beat the shit out of this Hiyashi, who is supposedly Hinata's father. Isn't someone touchy? But I have to agree with you beating the crap out of that cold-hearted man. To do that to his own daughter, even I'm not that cold-hearted, Hiranmaru said. The village too treated the girl like garbage. The village was one thing but her own family. Her life is getting much better, Hitsugaya thought, sarcastically. And why do I care so much for her? I just met her. Hiranmaru chuckled. You really don't get it, do you? It's because you like her and see her a very precious person to you, Hiranmaru said, amusingly. Hitsugaya's eyes twitched with a very small blush on his cheeks. What are you talking? He asked, coldly. Hiranmaru found it really amusing when he noticed that small blush. What I mean is you see her as a very precious friend you want to protect. She's different paired to the other women you met before. Even if he may have forgotten, he subconsciously didn't, Hiranmaru thought before continuing. You see Hinata a fragile wallflower who has some kind of warm and powerful strength within her. You want her to be happy and cheerful. You even want to see her smile, Hiranmaru teased. Hitsugaya just growled at him to continue. You want to make her strong to go against her own. She really is different. You noticed her pure heart, Hitsugaya. She wants to prove herself and others that she is strong, not weak. Plus there is the fact you being overprotective of her and want to beat up the person or people who make her feel sad and upset. The girl is full of light and pureness and you saw that. You saw the strength within her that nobody has ever bothered to notice. Gaki, you really do care for her, Hiranmaru finished. If you want to know, she also really cares about you. She saved you earlier from injuries and from your own spiritual pressure, which by the way went out of control. The girl took care of you all night. She was very worried about you, Hiranmaru said. Hitsugaya found himself thinking over what his Zanpakuto said. He was right, again. He did care about Hinata. Ever since he first met Hinata, he definitely felt the need to protect her. She looked so fragile, like she could break by touching her. Yet he noticed her determination and strength, wanting to prove her worth. That's what caught his attention toward the girl. He wanted to help and protect her. He never felt that kind of need before. And you, the Hokage said, snapping Hitsugaya out of his thoughts. Toshiro Hitsugaya, he answered. Hitsugaya, can you tell me how you happened to meet Hinata? The Hokage asked. I can answer that. Hokage-sama, Hinata stuttered out. The Hokage looked at her curiously. Hinata gulped but didn't back out now. While I was walking in the forest iis. Spotted Hitsugaya-san in the SS snow, you unconscious. He was I injured and so IITT treated his wounds but I'm not sure if they're all be better and now. The Hokage raised an eyebrow. Snow. Oh no, I've forgotten about that. How am I going to escape this? I could practically tell that it doesn't rarely snow here, Hitsugaya thought. Don't ask me. I don't know how to get away with this one, Hiranmaru said. Hinata, did your chakra created this snow, again? The Hokage asked. Hitsugaya was now the one who's surprised. Wait, what does he mean by that? He wondered. Hinata looked down at her hands again. Well, I'm not too sure, Hokage-sama, Hinata answered. She could practically feel herself blushing. Anyo, Hokage-sama. I've been meaning to ask. But why is my chakra always cc cold a and w warm a at the same time? Why does my chakra makes snow? Why is my chakra L light B blue and L lavender when our regular chakra is B blue? Hinata asked. The Hokage sighed. I'm sorry, Hinata, that I can't reveal to you. At least, not yet, that is, the Sondime said. Hinata nods sadly. I understand. Hiranmaru, do you know what chakra is? Hitsugaya asked toward his Zanpakuto. Actually, that I do. I managed to gather information about the area we are right now. It turns out to be their energy source. It's almost like Ryotsu. Chakra is when spiritual and physical energy mold together, creating something new. So it's very possible that you'll be able to do it, Hiranmaru explained. In all reality he shouldn't. Since he's a dead spirit, a Shinigami, who has no physical form. Meaning no physical energy, but somehow he has one. I really don't get what's going on, but if his friends were to come and get him, his body will transfer back to his spiritual form. That is if he wants to go back. I have feeling things will get very complicated later on, Hiranmaru thought. Hitsugaya mentally nods. Thanks, Hiranmaru. No problem, Hitsugaya. Since you don't have nowhere to go, Hinata, you'll have to live alone in one of the living homes I'll be giving you, the Hokage said. Hinata nodded nervously. Hitsugaya on the other hand was a different story. Hokage-sama, Hitsugaya calmly called. The Hokage almost forgotten about him but answered either way. Yes, Hitsugaya, if it's all right, may I live with Hinata? This morning a whole mob came by earlier yelling about killing the demon. From what I can tell, they were after Hinata, Hitsugaya said. The Hokage's eyes widened. He knew it must have been the villagers. He fixed his gaze at the boy in front of him. His presence screams of a prodigy and strong power. He could tell by the look in the boy's eyes were not that of a 7-year-old at all. He gave in, knowing it will be unsafe for the young ex-heiress to be out there alone. Hinata on the other hand was in shock. He wants to stay and live with me. Why? Everyone else hates me but he doesn't. Even though he talks coldly he didn't show any hatred toward me. He even carried me all the way back here. I don't want to trouble him because of me. I'm not even worth it at all. She thought depressingly. Hitsugaya-san, why you really don't have to stay WW with me. I really don't want to trouble you, Hinata said. She smiled at him sadly, not wanting the white-haired boy to trouble himself. Hitsugaya noticed the sad smile gracing on her face. He didn't like it all. He hid his frustrated emotions with a motionless face. It's no trouble at all, Hinata. Besides I have nowhere to go. I don't remember anything much of my past. So you're of no trouble to me, Hinata, Hitsugaya said, calmly. All right then, the Hokage took out a pair of keys and handed them to Hitsugaya. The home I given you isn't that far. You'll be able to notice it right away. It's a big, blue, raggy mansion. It's the only one I know that you're allowed to be in, the Hokage said. Thank you, Hokage-sama. Hinata stuttered. Hitsugaya just nods, gratefully to the old man. Before you go Hitsugaya, let me see your wounds, the Hokage said. Hitsugaya nods and came forth in front of the Hokage. Hitsugaya began to put the upper half of his black hakama down much to Hinata's embarrassment. Hinata quickly turned around with a big blush on her face. Hitsugaya just lifted an eyebrow from her actions. The Hokage just chuckled amusingly along with Hiranmaru, who by now is laughing. The Hokage unwrapped the bandages and noticed how it was well taken care of. And Hinata treated this boy's wounds. She might have the potential becoming the new Sennin. She might become more powerful than Tsunade herself someday. Now that will be the day. If Tsunade were here she would have been mildly impressed. She might even take her as apprentice, thought the Hokage. Your wounds will heal in a few days. So it's best if you take it easy, the Hokage suggested. Hitsugaya nods. He put the half of his hakama back on. Come on, Hinata, Hitsugaya said while walking out toward the door. Hi, Hinata squeaked out. She immediately ran after him while bowing down to the Hokage. The Sondime chuckled. I sure hope that boy will make Hinata feel a lot better than her father. I wonder what will become between those two. From the look in the boy's eyes showed. He obviously cares for Hinata, he said amusingly. He looked at the fort's picture on the wall. I just wish your message came through to this village, Minato, the Hokage said sadly. Hitsugaya and Hinata found the mansion rather easily, just like the third had said. It was a bit scary for Hinata. Subconsciously, she grabbed Hitsugaya's wrist. When Hitsugaya felt her soft hand, he turned toward Hinata. He then noticed how nervous she was. You okay? Hitsugaya asked in a monotone voice, with a hint of worry in it. Hinata snapped out of it and noticed her hand holding onto Hitsugaya's wrist. She suddenly blushed a few shades of red. I'm sorry, Hitsugaya-san, Hinata said, after she let go of his wrist. It's okay. Come on let's go in, Hitsugaya said. Hi. Hinata followed Hitsugaya behind. Hitsugaya looked back at where Hinata held her hand in. Her hands were so soft and warm, he thought while looking at his wrist. Once they were inside, they found the house a bit more comfortable. It was a bit dusty but it was all right. The mansion must be big enough for 6 or 10 people at most, maybe more. It probably belongs to the Hokage since the whole mansion was great. The rooms were all big with its own bed, cupboards, closets, window, and bathroom. The mansion has a nice kitchen and huge living room with a huge backyard. It even has its own library on ninjutsus, genjutsus, taijutsus, and history about the other elemental countries and of Konoha. Even a whole sections of bingo books along with the contents of bloodlines. Probably owned the Hokage thinking they deserve them. Hinata opened her backpack and took out a white garb with the number 10 on the back. Hinata handed it to Hitsugaya, who gave a confused look. This II is why yours. IITT took it O off B before IH had to BB bandage why your injuries, Hinata answered, finding herself blushing from recalling seeing his bare chest. Bad Hinata. Stop thinking that way. I'm not a beep like that Ero Junin. Arg. I really am going to get that beep along with that book of his. She thought. The said Junin sniffed again while feeling a very bad shiver. Now the silver high. Red Junin is really darn right scared and worried. Hitsugaya blinked a few times before grabbing the white garb. Just touching it and seeing it gave a darn right aching headache. He ignored the pain and gently grabbed the white garb. He could see his blood has stained the garb. Looks like I have to wash it, Hitsugaya sighed. But why does it make me have this painful headache just by looking at it? Hitsugaya wondered. Hirinmaru sighed sadly. Yup, he definitely had forgotten about being the 10th captain of the Soul Society which he worked his butt off for. I sure hope he has a better life here compared over there. Sad really. Ever since Ichigo and the others invaded the Soul Society to save Rukia everything went downhill. Thanks, Hinata, Hitsugaya thanked, gracious fully. Hinata blushed and nods. She took her backpack and left to go change in a room she will choose to live in. It took her a while to find a comfortable room for her. It was really huge. Inside the room had a king-size bed with window that shows the backyard. The bathroom was huge too and beautiful, with a tub and a shower. Her closet was big as well. Hinata wasn't really the type of girl to have many clothes or cares what she wears. So it will probably have lots of room, considering the fact she only has 3 sets of clothes in her backpack. There was even a desk near the window with a lamp on it. Hinata loved the room. Now that she thought about it, maybe she can have Naruto move in with her. I mean, the mansion has its own dojo, sorry for not mentioning that earlier. Almost forgot to put that in there. Winking face. A nice backyard to train in and a huge library to help them get stronger. Now Hinata really regrets for not hesitating or remembering her first and only friend when she left the Konoha gates. Naruto was the best friend anyone could ever want. He was an orphan whose parents died from the demon's attack 7 years ago. Naruto left the orphanage and lived in an apartment when he found out the way the caretaker treated his best friend, mainly Hinata. Whenever she visits she gets shunned from the caretaker and children did the same. Naruto didn't like it so he left to live in an apartment. That was just about a year ago. Hinata wants Naruto to move in so he can be in a more comfortable place such as this. So Hinata decided to ask him once she meets him again. Especially since all Naruto ever eats was ramen. It is good but it can be very bad if you eat it all the time. The ramen will not make him grow any taller. Hinata was thankful for her mother. Before her mother died she taught Hinata how to cook. It was as if she knew her daughter might get thrown out soon. Hinata sighed. She went and dropped her backpack on her bed. She took out a pair of clothes and went toward the bathroom, wanting to get a nice warm shower. While she undressed she noticed all the scars, bruises, cuts, and stabs were all gone and healed. She hadn't really thought about it till now. Now that she thought about it, Hitsugaya's injuries still haven't healed along with the simple injuries. Her eyes widen with realization. Every time her father physically abuses her in training all her injuries Air healed in seconds and she still had the stamina and strength to still keep training with Naruto. Hinata shook her head. Whatever it may be I'll find out later. While Hinata took her shower Sugaya was in the halls of the mansion searching for the library. Hirinmaru was a bit confused to why he wants to go there. Hey, Hitsugaya, why would you want to go to the library? Hirinmaru asked. I want to know more about the ways this village works. Most of the people I noticed have very strong energies, or chakra if that's what I'm sensing. Most of the people were wearing headbands and those who have them noticed the powerful energy that I have. Maybe I can make a living here since I am going to stay. I don't know if I want to leave Hinata alone, Hitsugaya answered. Now he really regrets saying that last part. He could practically hear Hirinmaru snicker. So the Ice Prince has finally have fallen for a beautiful and cute maiden. Finally, if you ask me, she's actually perfect for you. I still can't believe you're doing everything you could to protect your girl, Hirinmaru teased with a smirk. Hitsugaya's eye twitched with a faint blush gracing on his cheeks. A big tick was formed on his head. What the heck are you talking about, Hiranmaru? I don't see her that way. Sure, I will come to terms seeing her as a friend but nothing more than that. Hitsugaya shouted at Hiranmaru with an irritated voice. Hiranmaru just chuckled, already knowing his feelings are actually becoming more than just a friend. Although, it's actually difficult to comprehend. Since Hitsugaya actually has feelings for Momo. Yup, things will get really difficult as time passes by. Truth be told, Hiranmaru wants Hinata gets together with Hitsugaya. She's way more better than Momo. Just 3D. AYS ago Momo has finally returned her feelings toward Hitsugaya. Hiranmaru sighed. If Momo was ever here, she'll definitely will tear these two apart. That will be painful. Still irritated with a fro. WN on his features, he finally found the library. It was huge _ no scratch that _ it goddamn gigantic. There were layers of books. One section filled with what it read, ninjutsu. The other read, genjutsu. Another two read, taijutsu. And the last two sections were of history on Konoha and other nations and bloodline limits, or kekkei genkei. There one other section, but Hitsugaya couldn't really comprehend what it is. He decided to check out the history section before he could read the other ones. Since he has no idea what they were all about, he picked one scroll, sat down on a desk nearby and read about the history of Konoha. Meanwhile, Hinata finally finished her bath and started dressing her clothes on. She wore a standard black sleeveless shirt with a baggy purple sweater. She wore black pants that reached a few centimeters past her knees along with a standard ninja black sandals. She went back toward her bed, where she left her backpack. She looked through it and searched for something. After a while she finally found it. In her hand was her mother's beautiful necklace. It was really beautiful, made out of crystals around the strings till it reached a blue, lavender dragon-shaped crystal, hanging from the necklace. Her mother actually made it just for her. This was practically the only thing she could have that was from her mother. Hot wet tears poured down from Hinata's eyes. She truly missed her mother. She was practically the second, no third person who truly cared for her if she counts the Hokage. Her mother always gave her love and warmth towards her. Hinata wanted to protect her mother, but she couldn't in the end. Instead, she will not break her promise that she made towards her mother before she died. She will become a strong kunyushi. Even if she doesn't like violence, she will do anything to protect those who are precious to her. Even the village that scorned her, she will protect them. She will prove the village wrong. She will become a medic nin. A powerful one and a powerful kunyushi. She will help Naruto achieve his dreams becoming Hokage. That was her promise toward her mother. In the end her mother smiled warmly at her. Her mother's final words were to always be nice, kind, and strong. That was the nature her mother saw in her. Her mother believed in her. Hinata wiped her tears away, fiercely. She shakily sighed. She wore the necklace her mother gave her and dropped her backpack in her closet. She made a mental note to make more ointments and buy more bandages later. Hinata headed straight toward the kitchen to make something to eat for herself and Hitsugaya. Speaking of Hitsugaya, Hinata wonders where he is. He's probably looking around or something, Hinata thought. Hinata went to the fridge and was thankful to see there was still fresh food inside. She took some of them to make a snack out of it. Well, it's probably not a snack to a 7-year-old girl, but still it'll work. She made natto for herself and Hitsugaya. Hinata took both plates and went to go look for Hitsugaya. If she only knew that soon she will find a great discovery that will change someone's life along with hers and Hitsugaya's life for a long time. The library discovery. Hinata searched everywhere for the white-haired boy. She really wants to find him since she's feeling very nervous walking around alone. Especially when the mansion is so big. Hinata gulped nervously. Her arms ached a bit for carrying the nattos she made for herself and Hitsugaya. The only place Hinata never gone was the library. So that's where she's heading. After reaching her destination, she relieved a soft sigh when she noticed the familiar white hair. She silently went over, trying not to disturb him from what he is doing. Unfortunately, Hitsugaya heard her, more like felt her coming in. If you're trying to keep quiet, then don't be, Hinata, Hitsugaya said coldly, still not turning around from the scrolls. Hinata froze from her tracks. She knew she was walking in very quietly. In a way she was disappointed. Subconsciously she pouted. Hinata blinked once she noticed. Naruto must have rubbed off on me, she thought. Ever since she and Naruto been friends, Naruto played jokes around Hinata. Most of the time Naruto always snuck up on her. She didn't know how he could do that. So she made a goal to do the same with him. Easier said than done. The boy had a knack sensing her or anyone else. Of course Naruto enjoyed teasing her for not accomplishing it. But in a brotherly way. Hinata carefully headed toward the desk Hitsugaya is using. She put their nattos down on the desk. Anyo. I am made en nattos F for you US, she stuttered out nervously. Hitsugaya looked up and noticed her sitting at the opposite end of the desk he's using. He then looked down on the food she made. The smell of it made want to drool but composed himself from doing that. Just looking at the food made him feel a familiar aching pain in his forehead. He winced from the pain. Hinata noticed the pain expression on his face. She quietly bent forward and rubbed the aching forehead. Needless to say Hitsugaya enjoyed the feeling. Of course he shook that off because he could definitely hear Hiramoru snickering. Hinata carefully rubbed it with her delicate hand. She was glad to see he was feeling better. So she reluctantly sat back down, letting her hand to let go. She started playing with her index fingers while looking down at them. She got the feeling that it will become a habit. Hitsugaya noticed this and figured it was probably a habit showing how nervous she is in. He sighed and took his plate and began to eat his natto. Hinata smiled when she noticed him beginning to eat. So she too, took hers and began to eat. After complimenting her cooking, the air between them began to feel more comfortable. Hinata began to stutter less around the boy. She even began to smile more, but it was still difficult from all the hardships she faced in less than a day. Hi. Sugaya too began to talk to her less coldly, but Hinata didn't mind. It showed his true personality. They both began to know each other as time passes by, which was only about an hour but felt like an eternity to them. Hinata also found out in their conversation that Hitsugaya can get annoyed at times. Which made her giggle, and to a result at that Hitsugaya gave her an annoyed look. Again making it hard for her to stop. After finishing their natto, Hinata looked at the scrolls Hitsugaya was reading. It was full of big words for her that it began to make her feel dizzy. I mean, come on, she's still 7. Even though her father said she was supposed to know how to read without any difficulty about now. Just thinking about her father made her feel depressed but hid it away deep within her heart. She looked again at the scrolls, then to Hitsugaya, who began to look at it again. As curious as any 7-year-old, she asked, what are why you reading, Hitsugaya-kun? Yes, after being familiar with him He began to call him with kun like Naruto. Only with Naruto she calls him Aniki or Nisan, since Naruto never had any siblings. So like any older brother he felt very happy when he calls him that. He looked at her and noticed the curious look she gave him. Hitsugaya sighed but didn't mind answering. In fact, he never felt annoyed with Hinata. It was actually hard to get annoyed with the girl in front him. I'm reading about this village and its history. Later on I'll read those other scrolls about ninjutsu, genjutsu, and taijutsu. Since I have no idea what they are, he responded in his usual monotone voice. Hinata blinked a few times before adjusting everything she heard. She then made a confused look. But don't everyone learns that in the academy? She asked confusingly. Hitsugaya raised an eyebrow. They have an academy? He asked. No duh, Hitsugaya. Where do you think every ninja in this village learn in? The circus. Hiramoru said sarcastically at the end. Hitsugaya's eye twitched from his Zanpakuto comment. Hinata nods, not noticing his eye twitch. Yeah, every 7-year-old child who wants to participate becoming a ninja enters the academy. I was planning to ask Hokage-sama to sign me in. She said innocently as usual. But then I have to change my last name. Wonder what should I be called now? Hinata thought. Hitsugaya thought about this for a second before saying, I'll come with you later since I want to see what I can do here. Hinata nods but then noticed the picture in the scroll Hitsugaya was reading. Who's he? She asked while pointing at the picture. That's the 4th Hokage, it says. He's known to be the youngest Hokage in the village. He's also famous to be called as the Yellow Flash, from being so fast that it leaves a yellow flash behind. It also says that he saved the village from the Great Shinobi War a few years ago. But what he's mostly famous for was when he saved Konoha from the demon dragon, Isu Tsubasa, just 7 years ago. In December 27, Hitsugaya read. Hinata froze, both from the Yondaime's picture and the date that Isu Tsubasa attacked the village. She always heard about the demon, and every time she heard it she finds herself getting glared by the village. She didn't know why, and now she's scared to know. Hinata looked back at the Yondaime's picture. He looks just like Naruto-kun, she whispered. Of course Hitsugaya heard. Naruto. Who's he? He asked with a slight of anger in his tone. Hiranmaru heard it, of course. He smirked. He really loves seeing this, since Hitsugaya was always known as the Ice Prince in the Souled Society. Hinata nearly jumped from surprise. Huh. Oh, Anyo, he's AAF friend of mine. He's more like a B brother T to me really, Hinata answered nervously when she detected the slight anger tone in his voice. Did I do something bad? Hinata wondered worriedly. She really didn't want to lose a friend since she only has Naruto. Hitsugaya found himself feel relieved, which by the way puzzled him. He shook it off when he heard Hinata answered with a nervous voice. Oh, sorry about the way I talked earlier. I'm not mad at you if that's what you're wondering, he said. Hinata smiled warmly at him. Okay, she said. Hitsugaya could practically feel that tiny blush creeping out on his cheeks. Anyway, what does Naruto look like? He asked with a slight stutter. Well, I have a picture if that helps, Hinata said. She was actually surprised hearing Hitsugaya stutter. She actually found that very amusing. She reached out her pocket and brought out a picture of her and Naruto. This was taken about a month ago. They went to a booth take a picture. Something that will be something they want to remember. They even made funny faces. Only this one was of them smiling. Hinata was on top of Naruto's back while having her arms wrapped around his neck, grinning happily. Naruto was on the bottom with his famous happy, goofy grin. Hitsugaya looked at the picture, then back at the Yondaime's. His eyes widened slightly. He immediately took both photos next to each other. His eyes narrowed. He went back to the history section and brought out the contents on the Namikaze clan. Hinata had a blank face, not knowing what's going on. Anyo, Hitsugya-kun. What are you doing? She asked. Hinata, what's Naruto's last name? Hitsugaya asked, still looking over the scroll. Ignoring the question that's being asked. Well, Hokage-sama told Naruto Aniki that his last name was Uzumaki, she answered, now really feeling confused. Hitsugaya narrowed his eyes before softening them at Hinata. Can you go and try to look to find information on the Uzumakis? He asked. Hinata nods, and without hesitation she went and looked at the many scrolls on the many hidden villages. Meanwhile Hitsugaya tried to piece out the pictures between the Yondaime, Minato Namikaze, and Naruto. He then looked at the family photos of the Namikaze clan. He noticed how the men and women were all blonde with the same intense blue, azure eyes. What's most noticeable was that all the men had the same blonde spiked hair. If he hadn't known any better, then Naruto could possibly be a Namikaze. Even his Zanpakuto agrees. There's something off about this. It's like something was missing. But quite ironic how nobody noticed the similarities except for Hinata. He guessed the Hokage knows about this subject. I found it, Hinata said. Hinata gave the scroll, which seems to be about the village named Whirlpool. Inside the scroll that Hinata dropped was about the Uzumakis. Hitsugaya spread the scroll to read it. It seems that the Uzumakis along with the whole village of Whirlpool were invaded. It seems that only one survived during the invasion. The scroll says that she was the most powerful kunyushi in the village. Her name was Kushina SP Uzumaki. She came to Konoha about 10 or 11 years ago. Years later it says she married the fourth Hokage, Minato Namikaze. It seems that their son was later born 7 years ago on October 10, Hitsugaya read. Hinata's eyes widened. Naruto Aniki's birthday is on October 10. She gasped out without a stutter. Narrowing his eyes, Hitsugaya took both photos of Minato and of Naruto and Hinata. Along with Kushina's photo, he brought them side by side. I knew something seemed suspicious. All the Namikazes were all blonde with the same blue eyes. Especially the men's. It's most noticeable that Naruto resembles so much of the fourth. What I can't figure out was how nobody figured it out. Hitsugaya said. It was probable. Why the Hokage, or maybe it was because that the boy is friends with Hinata. Most likely from the Hokage, since he probably changed the Gaki's last name from his mother's side, Hiranmaru said. But why would he? Hitsugaya wondered. Hiranmaru rolled his eyes. He was most likely trying to protect the fourth's son. You should know that this Minato had many enemies when he was alive. So the third might have thought that his enemies will try to kill his son if they figured out he's his son. Especially with having the Namikaze name, Hiranmaru explained. That does make sense. Especially with his appearance. He looks just like him. I would have thought he was the fourth's clone, Hitsugaya thought. So, the fourth Hokage is Naruto's father? Hinata asked with wide eyes. He nods. Basically, yes, Hitsugaya said. Wow. Naruto will be really happy to know who were his parents. Since he never gotten to know who they were, Hinata said, happily. Hinata then went off to look around the major sections of scrolls. Hitsugaya looked her way and noticed looking at the taijutsu, ninjutsu, and genjutsu scrolls. Now that he thought about it, he never knew what they were all about. Hinata, what are taijutsu, ninjutsu, and genjutsu? Hitsugaya asked. Hinata almost jumped from surprise but then composed herself. Except she still had a small blush on her cheeks. Anyo, taijutsu is basically a hand-to-hand C combat. And ninjutsu are all T techniques or J jutsus you use like making a solid clone of Y yourself. Genjutsu is an illusion that C can distract you or SC something Y you don't want to SC. Or that's what I've been told, Hinata explained. Hitsugaya looked at the sections with interest. He then noticed the other section he hasn't looked at. He moved toward it. On the top of the section read, Sealing Jutsus and Kenjutsus. He raised an eyebrow with wonder. Hinata noticed Hitsugaya looking at it as if wondering what they are. She moved toward it and read the same thing. Her eyes widened. She too different scroll out. One was of basic sealing and the other of basic kenjutsu. She looked through it and soon her eyes widened like saucers. She couldn't believe what she's looking at. Hinata knew Naruto will love to see these. From what has read, just a little from not fully understanding all of it, the Uzumakis were known to be most powerful kenjutsu experts in the whole shinobi world. It says they can manipulate their element in their kenjutsu techniques with their katanas. Hitsugaya noticed how Hinata was so interested in those two scrolls. Hinata, what are you looking at? He asked while raising an eyebrow. Hinata looked up and pointed at the scrolls. I can't really read it that well but I know they are basically shown. The basic teachings on sealing jutsus and kenjutsu, she answered softly. Sealing jutsus and kenjutsus? He asked. She nods. Hi. Sealing jutsus were mostly used by the 4th and his sensei. They are actually complicated to learn and to make one of your own. Kenjutsus are basically sword fighting styles, Hinata explained. Sword fighting styles, huh? Hitsugaya thought. Hiranmaru chuckled. You already gotten that down. Considering you're a master of swordmanship specialist. Since I am your Zanpakuto, Hiranmaru said. Hitsugaya thought about it for a minute. Till he thought of an idea but he first needs to know if it's possible. Hey Hiranmaru, is it possible for Hinata and Naruto, since he knows he'll get along with him, maybe to get their own Zanpakuto? Hitsugaya asked. Hiranmaru almost thought the world was about to end. Well, not really. It goes to show how shocked he was. But then he thought about it. Now that he thought about it, Ichigo was able to become a Shinigami and calling out his Zanpakuto. But in his spirit form, so in reality he isn't sure. Not that Hitsugaya remembers. Although there is a possibility, that is if they are able to communicate with it. Which is in their inner selves. Since a Zanpakuto is a part of the person wielding it. Meaning the wielder and the Zanpakuto have the same soul. Such as Hitsugaya and himself now that he thought about it. After all, his spiritual pressure and chakra are made out of the element of ice. Not to mention they both have the same personality, in a way. Probably. In fact, I'm not so sure. If you're able to teach them to draw out their ryotsu along with them communicating with them inside their inner selves, there is a possibility. But then they also have to mix their ryotsu along with their chakra and summon them. I'll tell you about that later, but I think it will be a good idea to teach them. Just by looking at the picture of this Naruto, I could tell he has the potential to be able to summon his Zanpakuto along with Hinata. There is also a possibility for them to see the Hallows. Which by the way will be a bad idea in a way. But yes, they are able to summon their Zanpakuto. If you want, I'll help you out. Teaching them how to summon their Zanpakuto, Hiranmaru explained. Thanks Hiranmaru. I think I'll take the offer, Hitsugaya told his Zanpakuto. Hinata looked rough the other section about the Byakugan. In all reality she hasn't been able to fully master the Juken. Along with the other fighting attacks she hasn't been able to know from the Hyugas. She needs to know how to master it, and if possible she can make some of her own. It was a good thing there are so many ninjutsu scrolls for her to learn. She suddenly came across 2 huge scrolls. One of Hem she immediately knew as a summoning contract. What confused her even more was why would it be here in the first place. The other one she wasn't so sure of. So as usual her curious as any 7-year-old went toward it and opened it. It was very complicated. It says something about elemental chakra. She turned to Hitsugaya, who was lost in his thoughts, thought about asking him to read this since it's so complicated to understand. Anyo, Hitsugaya-kun, Anyo. Hinata began nervously. Hitsugaya snapped out of his thoughts and looked at Hinata while raising an eyebrow. Hinata looked at him nervously and a bit embarrassed. She pointed at the scroll. Hitsugaya knew she was trying to ask if he could read it for her. He walked toward the Hinata. He looked down at the scroll. His eyes widened. It was an interesting scroll. It's all about chakra affinity. Hinata looked at Hitsugaya, expecting for him to explain what it's about. Once he noticed, he looked back down the scroll and said, "It talks about the elemental affinity in our chakra." Elemental affinity of our chakra? Hinata asked while beeping her head. He nods. Chakra affinity is about which element our chakra resides in, Hitsugaya explained. What do you mean, Hitsugaya-kun? Hinata asked. What I mean is, if our chakra affinity is fire, then all fire jutsus we use become much stronger than water, wind, earth, and lightning jutsus. Every shinobi have their own specific chakra affinity. Most shinobis have 1 or 2. There's a possibility to have more than that. The only shinobis who knows about chakra affinity, Tai or Junin and other higher-ranked shinobis, Hitsugaya explained from the scroll. Hinata was in awe by this information. She couldn't believe it, although it's not really strange since all ninjutsus ninjas use resides from the elements in the world. Such as the fire jutsus, water jutsus, earth jutsus, wind jutsus, and lightning jutsus. But Hitsugaya-kun, how would you know which affinity our chakra reside in? Hinata asked. Well, Hitsugaya searched through the scroll to find the answer. It says that this special type of paper is used to determine our chakra affinity. Ush your chakra to the paper to determine your chakra affinity. If the paper burns to ashes, that means your affinity is fire. If it gets wet, then your affinity is water. If the paper crumbles, then your affinity is lightning. If it's split in half, then your affinity is wind. The last one is if the paper turns to dust, then your affinity is earth. That's basically all the elements that it reads in here. And if I'm right, then your affinities is of wind and water. After all, those 2 main elements make up ice, Hiranmaru said. Hitsugaya agrees. Hinata looked at the scroll with amazement. Shish. He went to the summoning contract while Hitsugaya put the other scroll away. She opened the scroll and read the summoning contract as a wolf contract. This is for Mini Wolf and Moro. Hinata noticed there were a few names on them, but all of the names looked rusted and smeared. Something inside her told her to sign it. Sign it, Gaki. It'll help you. Don't worry, the wolves are loyal and trusting, a voice in her head said. In a trance she nods. She opened the contract to an empty page to sign it. She looked around to find something sharp to cut her thumb and sign it with her blood. Hitsugaya noticed something was wrong. He noticed Hinata pull out a kunai that was on a desk and cut her thumb. His eyes widened with shock. Hinata didn't notice or just ignored him. She headed back to scroll and signed it. The scroll then shut itself up as if loading up the name. Hinata soon came back from her trance and blinked a few times. She soon felt someone hit her on the head by something hard. You baka, what do you think you were doing? Hitsugaya yelled with an annoyed tick on his head. Hinata blinked a few times with a confused look on her face. What are you talking about? She asked. Hitsugaya's eyebrow twitched. What do you mean by, what are you talking about? Just look at your thumb, Bakagaki. He yelled, feeling very annoyed. Hinata blinked twice before looking down on her thumb. Oh, it's bleeding, she said blankly. Hitsugaya's face faulted. He felt like yelling at the kid but instead hit her gently at her head with the end of his zanpakuto. Hinata held on to the bump on her head. It hurt Hinata and mentally reminded herself never to annoy Hitsugaya so much. Hitsugaya sighed and went to go look for a bandage. Meanwhile Hinata tried remembering why her thumb was bleeding. She remembered looking at the wolf contract and then she immediately went back to the scroll and opened it. Her eyes widened from shock. Her name was written in the scroll. She heard Hitsugaya come back with a first aid kit. He kneeled down in front of her and reached out Hinata's hand. At first Hinata was a bit uncomfortable and blushed before settling down. Hitsugaya carefully bandaged her thumb. He sighed after bandaging it. Make sure not to do that, he said. Hinata nods numbly. Hi, she raised. Hitsugaya noticed how late it was. They must have stayed in the library for a long time. Hirinmaru suggested for them to go to bed. Hitsugaya agreed since he himself was getting tired. Let's go to bed, Hinata. It's getting late, Hitsugaya said. Hinata nods and began to yawn. Oh okay, she said. Before leaving though she remembered Hitsugaya didn't have any other pair of clothes. The hakama that he's wearing and teared and still has dried blood. Anyo, Hitsugaya-kun. Are you going to wear those clothes? She asked while biting her bottom lip. Hitsugaya blinks and looked down. He noticed why she asked. He sighed. I don't have any other of clothes so I might as well accept it, Hitsugaya said. Hinata frowned and then remembered she has one pair of clothes that were a little too big for her. She was glad she has those. They looked like they should belong to a boy really. Hitsugaya-kun, I actually have another pair of clothes that actually might fit. They're a bit big for me so, you can have them if you want, she asked. With a small blush and barely any stutter. You don't have to Hitsugaya said, not feeling very sure about it. Hinata shook her head. And no, I want to. I mean, want to help, she said with a much bigger blush. Hitsugaya looked at her, surprised. Alright then, he finally accepted. Hinata smiled and grabbed his wrist without thinking, dragging him toward her room. Hitsugaya as a bit surprised from her action but didn't mind so much. Once they were there Hinata let go of his wrist after noticing to what she has done. She immediately apologized but Hitsugaya said it was alright, which led to Hirinmaru teasing him that he probably like it. Hitsugaya gotten annoyed by that but had a faint blush on his cheeks. Hinata searched through her almost empty closet. She immediately found them and took them out. She came back to Hitsugaya and accidentally tripped. She shut her eyes, waiting for the impact of the floor. After a while she slowly opened her eyes. You okay, Hinata? Hitsugaya's voice was here. Her eyes widened. She was held on Hitsugaya's arm. She blushed from being so close to him and nods. I'm alright, she said with her stutter back. Hitsugaya said an eyebrow after hearing her stutter but shook it off. He picked her up and noticed the bundle in her arms. Hinata noticed him staring at the clothes in her arms. She gave them to him. Here, she offered. Hitsugaya reached out toward it and thanked her. Hinata said it was alright. Hitsugaya nods and head out toward the door. Before leaving he turned around and said, "Good night, Hinata." Hinata faintly blushed and smiled at him warmly. "Good night Hitsugaya-kun." After he left she sighed. It was a long rough night but it was also a shocking day. Especially with the possibility with Naruto being the Yondaime's son. Hinata headed toward the bed and tucked in after taking off her sandals off. She mentally reminded herself to go shopping tomorrow to buy clothes for herself and Hitsugaya. Before long sleep overcame her. Hitsugaya also noted to go shopping for extra clothes. The clothes Hinata gave him were actually comfortable. He put away Hirinmaru next to his new bed. He sighed tirelessly. He had a rough day. At least he knows more about where he now lives. He should start training himself sometime. Before long sleep overcame him. Rescue mission and the dreadful shopping day. The Soul Society, it was in major chaos and in panic. Especially in Squad 10, for you see their captain went missing. They don't know if he's dead or not. The captain, Toshiro Hitsugaya, went missing just a day ago. At first it wasn't that big a deal till the next day. Hitsugaya Taicho was never late on a mission. Soon everyone has gotten worried. Hitsugaya Taicho's friends have gotten worried for their short, white-haired friend the most. Momo Hinamori was especially worried. After all, just recently they both started dating 4 days ago. Rangaku Matsumoto tried to calm and comfort the poor girl. Momo, it's going to be alright. I'm sure Hitsugaya Taicho is fine, Rangaku reassured. Momo sniffed from her tears. I know but I just can't stop worrying about him, Momo said, sadly. Quote, I know but you just have to be strong about it, Momo, Rangaku said, softly. Momo nods but again started to cry. Only this time it wasn't as hard as last time. Rangaku hugged her and rubbed at her back to make her feel more comfortable. Ever since her Taicho wasn't back, she was the first to go looking for him. That's when she found out he was attacked by a powerful Hallow. She wasn't sure if he's alive or not. She only prays that he's alright. Squad 10 was so unorganized ever since they were informed about their captain. Rangaku really hates being the one who has to do everything. Since Sugaya was the one who orders around the squad and does the paperwork. Ooh, don't let her get started about the nightmare of paperwork. She frickin' hates the mountain and nightmare of paperwork. Shish. E kept cursing about her Taicho not being there and not doing the paperwork. After all, she always runs away and escapes whenever paperwork was being mentioned. Ichigo and the rest of his friends were quickly informed. They too were worried about Hitsugaya. Ichigo and Renji both demanded to go out and try looking for him. Right now all the captains that are still around and are not traitors were now discussing about it. Shigekuni Yamamoto said there will be a rescue squad who will go out and look for Squad 10's Taicho. The Taicho in charge will be Squad 11 Jashiro Yukataki. Yukataki Taicho, choose who will go with you. After that, go out and search for Hitsugaya Taicho, Yamamoto ordered. Hi, Yukataki obliged. Yukataki knew who will go with him. Besides, there were a few who will bother him and persist to tag along anyway. So he went out and told Rukia Kuchiki to come along. She immediately went along with him. Later they went to go get Renji, Rangaku, Momo, Ichigo, Oreo, Oroheim, and Chad. What they don't know is that Hitsugaya is not in the Soul Society or in Ichigo's world. In fact, Hitsugaya is in a different dimension where the elemental continent is at. It will take a year for them to find out. But to Hitsugaya it took about 5 years. The next morning Hinata woke up a bit before 7. She was still a bit tired but made herself get up. At first she was confused to where she is till she remembered the events that have happened. Hinata sighed and gotten off the comfortable and warm bed. She took a towel that was already set in the closet and took out her second last pair of clothes. After that she went to take a shower. Hitsugaya woke up and sat up from the bed. He yawned and went to go take a shower as well. Before he could go to the bathroom to take his shower, he wrapped the towel around his waist to cover his, well, you get the idea. He folded the clothes Hinata gave him and went to the laundry room. He hoped he doesn't bump into Hinata. Ever since he has gotten to know her yesterday, he knew she was the type of person who gets easily embarrassed. After an uneventful walk toward the laundry room, Hitsugaya did the laundry on his clothes so he can use them again, for now till later. It took a while for them to get cleaned and dried, much to his dismay. Since he can smell the food Hinata's making, it will be hard for him to avoid her if he hadn't known to sense her spiritual pressure. Hitsugaya still had a difficult time sensing her since her presence was so different. It's probably her chakra that you're sensing, Hitsugaya. You're so used to sensing spiritual pressure that it's kind of foreign. After all, chakra is a bit different to what you normally sense, Hirinmaru explained. Hitsugaya thanked Hirinmaru for the explanation. After the clothes were dry and clean, he picked them up and headed back to his new room. He was glad he managed to avoid her on the way back. Hinata made breakfast after taking her shower. She now wears a plain lavender shirt with a heavy and big black jacket over it. She wore black baggy pants that reached a bit past her knee. She wore plain black ninja sandals. Around her neck was the necklace her mother made for her. She hummed while she cooked. It was one of her habits that she has gotten from her mother. People say she looked so much like her mother than her father. Hinata smiled because she actually wanted to be just like her. Her mother was kind and gentle. She always looks at people's hearts than their appearances or dark glares. Hinata's mother loved helping others and protects those who are precious to her. After setting the food down on the table, she went toward Hitsugaya's room. She knocked on his door and opened the door. "Breakfast is ready, Hitsu-Gaya-kun." Hinata immediately slowed down what she said. Her eyes widened and blushed fiercely. In front of her was Hitsugaya, about to put on his shirt with his pants on. But she can still make out his bare chest. Hitsugaya's eyes too widen. They just stood there for a while till, thump, Hinata fainted. Hitsugaya sweat dropped with a faint blush on his cheeks. He wanted to yell at her for opening the door without permission but decided to go against it. He sighed and quickly put on his shirt. He then went up to Hinata and picked her up, bridal style. Hitsugaya carried her toward the kitchen, which happens to have, thanked Kami-sama, a couch nearby. He set her down and softly brushed a hair string away from her face, revealing a cute, peaceful girl with a small blush visible. Hitsugaya blushed looking at her. He didn't know why, but just looking at her or in her presence made him feel calm. He sighed, in frustration. He really didn't know why he feels warm around his cheeks every time he's around her. He shook his head and turned around to the set table that Hinata set their breakfast at. He went up to it and smelled the aroma of it. It smelled so good that Hiraru began to drool over it. But Hitsugaya decided to wait till Hinata wakes up. It didn't take long for her to grab consciousness. Hinata grabbed her head and looked around with her eyelids half open. What happened? She asked herself, softly. "You fainted when I was half dressing myself," Hitsugaya responded with a monotone voice, as usual. Hinata blushed and looked down at her hands. "Gomen," she apologized. "It's all right. Come on, the food's going to get cold," Hitsugaya said, plainly. Hinata nods and sat down with Hitsugaya at the table. They both started to eat their breakfast and talked while they ate. It was better than eating with Hiyashi and the other Hyugas to Hinata. She loved Hitsugaya's company. It was comfortable even though he can get cold and annoyed. It didn't bother her. It just shows his personality. Hinata didn't mind. She became so used to it. She knows what emotions he shows in his cold, emotionless personality. After breakfast they helped each other cleaning the dishes. Hinata kept persisting for her doing it herself. But Hitsugaya plainly said he just wants to help. Hinata sighed and let him help. She noticed he can get stubborn sometimes. "Anyo, Hitsugaya-kun, if it's all right with you, can I go shopping? I need to buy some clothes since I don't have much. I was even planning to go get some for you too," Hinata said, without a stutter. Hitsugaya looked at Hinata and blinked a few times. "It's all right, but I'm coming with you," he said, after closing his eyes and put down the last set of dishes. Hinata smiled with a tint of pink on her cheeks. "Okay, thank you Hitsugaya-kun," she thanked. When they finished cleaning the dishes, Hinata went back to her room to grab her savings she managed to save. She went toward her backpack and took out her dragon-shaped wallet. She bolted out of the room and noticed Hitsugaya is already in front of the door. "Let's go," Hitsugaya said. Hi," she said, immediately heading down after him. To say the least, it was the worst shopping day ever. Hitsugaya wasn't the type to go shopping, but it was a normal shopping with Hinata. He didn't know why, but he somehow thought she was going to drag him from store to store. Hiraru chuckled at this since he knows why. Apparently Momo and Rangaku always drag him along and sort of annoy him. He knows that Hitsugaya hates shopping. So it was no surprising for him to expect to get dragged from store to store. Every store Hitsugaya and Hinata go through, they tried kicking Hinata out. Fortunately Hitsugaya made sure they don't do anything else to her. The way they look at her were the saw-me he had seen from the guards from yesterday. So he glared at them back with his cold green eyes. This stopped the people from glaring at Hinata cold. They shivered when they saw that glare. Hinata wasn't affected by it when she noticed the cold glare. She grabbed his wrist with a small blush on her cheeks. Hitsugaya looked at her with a questionably look. She smiled and shook her head. "Let's go to a different store." Hitsugaya-kun, Hinata suggested with a small stutter. He looked into her eyes and noticed how nervous she was being there. She even looked worried and didn't want him to do something to everyone there. He sighed and noticed she was softening him a lot. "All right, Hinata," he finally said. To say the least, Hitsugaya became more annoyed and cold toward the villagers. He could practically feel himself giving off killer intent at them. But whenever Hinata noticed it, she immediately grabbed his wrist to calm him down. It surprised him how easily she can calm him down. Hinata didn't want the villagers to get scared or start to hate her new friend. She was very worried since the villagers are already disliking Naruto because of his pranks for punishing them for not treating her well. The villagers began to hate Naruto for being close to her. It was hard for Hinata to make friends even though she's a Hyuga. But now she's not a Hyuga, not anymore that is. She hopes to make great friends soon. Naruto too wishes to make friends with her. That's why she's excited to go to the academy that is coming up soon. Now that she thought about it, she wonders if she's still allowed. But also wonders if Hitsugaya will be entering. She hopes so. She's already way too attached to him as much with Naruto. She better pay a visit with the Hokage just like she said she would yesterday. Hitsugaya noticed Hinata was lost with her thoughts. He snapped her out of it by waving his hand in front of her face. "Hey, you alright? You're spacing out on me," Hitsugaya said. Hinata blinked a few times to adjust things till she nods. "Gomenasai, I was just wondering if I'll be able to still go to the academy." "And wondering if you're going to enter the academy too," she mumbled quietly at the last part. The boy raised an eyebrow. "Nani? I can't hear you. Speak up," he said with a cold voice which didn't bother her since she can detect a warm concerned voice in it. "And nothing. Let's get going. I think that's a store that might let us in," she said quickly, hoping he'll drop it. Hitsugaya sighed. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to, you know. Let's go. I hope they aren't like the other ones," Hitsugaya said. She inwardly sighed. Hinata would have felt very embarrassed if she had to repeat that. Oh, the embarrassment. She sighed again. "I guess he must have noticed my nervousness about the subject," she thought. Inside the shop was huge and beautiful than what it appears from the outside. There weren't much people around. They both noticed many shinobis around than civilians right about now. Hinata instinctively grabbed the Hitsugaya's arm with discomfort. Hitsugaya noticed but didn't comment her letting go. Since this obviously makes her feel more better. Of course Hiranmaru kept teasing him about how much he actually liked it. To say the least, he was really annoyed at his Zanpakuto. Right about now he wishes he left Hiranmaru behind. Hinata noticed that there were a few who didn't give hatred looks or even cold ones. They gave her as if she was an ordinary girl in a shop looking for something. This made her a bit comfortable but still didn't let Hitsugaya go. Obviously, since there was still a lot of them giving those nasty looks at her. She tried to ignore them but it was so hard. They both went to look for the clothes they both want. Which was obviously the same one since they don't want to keep wearing different clothes. Hitsugaya had a hard time getting his but Hinata helped him out and gotten the clothes which actually suited him. He was actually relieved they weren't. Well, he didn't know what but was relieved it was something that he actually liked. Hinata was glad to help. After picking out their clothes they both head toward the register and paid for their clothes. They were both surprised to find the young man in his early 20s gladly let them pay. His name was Tazo, a nice young man who held no hatred or illness toward Hinata. He was actually one of the ones who saw her as a small innocent girl than a demon child. He was happy to see her with a friend. "You come back anytime you two," he said. Hitsugaya was actually relieved to say the least. It was so wrong for the people to give Hinata those looks when she hasn't done anything. Ever since he has gotten to know her so well, he knows that she was too innocent and pure. Yet vicious when he heard her confidentially said she will do anything to protect those she holds precious to her. Hiranmaru was right about him seeing something in her that immediately led him being drawn from her. She was completely different compared to him. She was warm, he was cold. Yet the girl was already breaking the ice barriers around him. Hinata was happy to see at least one of the shops were open for her to go to. She actually loved the shop. She told Tazo she'll come back soon. Now she was a bit nervous and worried for Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya was again giving off his cold glare at the villagers. Hinata softly sighed. Hitsugaya-kun, please don't give them those looks. I don't want them getting afraid of you or. She couldn't finish when she noticed the stern cold expression. You shouldn't let them get away with it, Hinata. Don't you ever get angry or annoyed by those looks they give you. You're letting them overpower you, Hitsugaya coldly said. Hinata downcast her head. Naruto almost said those same exact words. She just couldn't help it. She just couldn't find it in her to get angry or annoyed at the villagers. It's not like she was scared. Her heart doesn't have it in her to get angry at them. That's one of the reasons Hiashi dislikes about her, probably one of the ones that he hates about her. Hitsugaya-kun, it's not like I let them get away with it. They just feel this way toward me. I don't know why, but I just rather ignore it. I may be a weak 7-year-old but I don't want them to know that. At least, that's what I'm trying to do. Besides I don't know why but I just can't get angry at them. So please Hitsugaya-kun, please just drop it, Hinata said, trying her best not to cry. He didn't say a word after that. Instead he grabbed her hand and squeezed it, reassuring her that it was all right. Even so it didn't mean that he'll stop giving everyone a cold stare. He didn't like how they were looking at Hinata. Why would they look at her like that? Those thoughts kept repeating inside Hitsugaya's head. Ever since he had gotten to know Hinata, he knew that she was too gentle and kind that it made him feel very overprotective of her. She became a very precious friend to him without even realizing it. He wants to help her. He could see her strength and weaknesses, but most of all he could see the pureness in her heart. Hitsugaya knew Hinata wants to prove herself and everyone else that she's not weak. So that's when he decided to help her the best he can. They were lucky enough to have all of those scrolls to learn. Hinata blushed when she felt his hand holding hers. She didn't know why but she felt warm inside her chest and all the loneliness vanished. It was so strange, yet so comforting. The warmness of his hand and reassurance he gave her made her feel calm and happy. Hinata knew that Hitsugaya is becoming a very precious friend just like with Naruto. But somehow her feelings are a bit different compared with Naruto. In a way that she never thought ever exist. After still struggling to what she is feeling toward the white-haired boy next to her, she decided to drop it. But she could still feel the warmness around her cheeks. Hinata looked around and noticed the academy that she might attend. Which now that she remembered, she might as well ask the Hokage right now and ask whether or not Hitsugaya can attend. She turned to Hitsugaya and asked, Anyo. Hitsugaya-kun, if it's all right, can we go to the Hokage tower? I need to ask him about something. Hitsugaya looked at her and noticed she really wanted to go. He softly sighed and said, all right, let's go then. Hinata smiled warmly at him and said, thank you, Hitsugaya-kun. Out of instinct she hugged Hitsugaya. Which in turn made Hitsugaya feel very weird and hot around his cheeks. He could feel himself shiver from his head toward his toes. You can all guess, he's blushing. Hirainoru laughed and said, ha 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 ha. What's the matter Hitsugaya? Loved the hug you're getting from your wallflower Heim. He again began to laugh. Hitsugaya blushed a bit redder and gave an annoyed and cold voice toward his Zanpakuto. Shut up, Hinata. Finally realizing what she's doing immediately let with a large blush. She couldn't look at him so she instead looked down toward the ground. GGG gomenasai, Hitsugaya-kun, she stuttered, feeling very dizzy. Hitsugaya tried lowering his blush down, leaving a small pink tint on his cheeks. It's all right, let's just go, he quickly said. Hinata nods, still feeling very embarrassed. If Naruto ever found out what just happened, oh, he'll never live it down. He'll tease me for the rest my life, thought Hinata, finally reaching the Hokage's door, which they have difficulty since the guards wouldn't let them in. Hitsugaya really is starting to feel like releasing his Shikai and freeze every single shinobi that he sees. The guards were lucky that Hinata calmed the boy down. She was awfully worried. She knew that Hitsugaya was really disliking her village because of her. Luckily the Hokage noticed the commotion and ordered the guards to let them, which they grudgingly did. The Hokage was a bit disturbed how the guards treat the children. He only wishes they could see Hinata as herself and not the demon inside her. It seems the Yondaime's wish is not being fulfilled as he expected. Again he wishes the villages will see the girl and not the demon. He mentally sighed once he reached his desk and sat down. He looked at the children again and asked with his tired and gentle voice. Why have you come again, Hinata, Hitsugaya? I'm sure it must be something to get yourself in trouble to be here. Hinata blushed and said in her soft voice, Anyo. I wanted to know whether or not I'll still be able to enter the academy. Ah, yes Hinata. Don't worry about it. After that knucklehead will be really upset with me if I didn't, Sarutobi SP. Chuckled. Hinata smiled. Thank you, Hokage-sama. She thanked happily. That's right, Hitsugaya. Hitsugaya turned his attention to the Hokage. Would you like to enter the academy as well? It seems you're interested, Sarutobi asked. That wouldn't be too bad. I can learn more about the place there, probably, Hitsugaya thought. That's true, but remember to keep a low profile, Hitsugaya. You don't want them to know about your true strength. Yet. Train after the academy is over. You probably might want to train Hinata and Naruto during the academy years. My guess you'll probably have plenty of time to train them, Hiranmaru said. Hitsugaya mentally nods. You're probably right. He looked at the Hokage and nods. I accept to enter the academy, Hokage-sama, he answered respectively. Sarutobi smiled warmly at him. In all reality he was glad to hear it because he wants Hime to be there for Hinata alongside with Naruto. Hinata is already suffering enough as it is. Alright then, I'll assign you in the academy. They will start the semester in about a month, he informed them. They both nod and silently left from their dreadful shopping day. Hitsugaya swore to rarely shop in any shops here in Konoha. Meet the fox, moving in with the dragons. On the way back was the same thing which irritates Hitsugaya to no end. Hinata became very worried that he'll snap any minute. She hopes they're near to their new home. Even she hates the looks she gets from the village, but in the end she couldn't hate them. She mentally sighs and hopes to have a better day. Hitsugaya had his patience, but for some reason he's losing it and fast with the villagers. Hiranmaru managed to calm him down, reminding him that Hinata wouldn't like it if he starts to attack the villagers. As much as he wanted to do it too. They both were relieved when they noticed they were nearby their home. In unison they both sighed once inside. Hinata then smiled and headed toward her room to put her clothes away. Hitsuga looked at her for a minute till decided to pack his clothes away as well. It was uneventful the rest of the day. They were both pretty much tired from shopping. Soon enough they both fell asleep on their beds. Again, she's having that same weird dream. It happens often, but ever since last night it's becoming much clearer to her. In the dream she finds herself surrounded of snow with crystal lavender flowers. The wind blew slowly and gently around the area. It was warm and cold. It was pleasant to her. Where am I? Was all she asks herself, yet again. She tried going around, to find out at least where she is. At first in her earlier years of having these dreams they were a blur after finding that person. She came to a stop after seeing him again. Only this time she can see more clearer to her. He was taller than her. His hair was spiked hair, a bit long on his neck. That's when she noticed his hair was white. He wore a white garb with the number 10 on the back. She couldn't his face or the rest to what he wore since he had his back toward her. Who are you? She asked to the stranger. For some reason she knows him, yet she doesn't. She tried reaching out to him as if her life depended on it. In reality she was desperate to know. She doesn't know why, but she wants to know. No, that wasn't it, she needed to know. The boy began to walk toward her. His eyes were shadowed, so she couldn't make out his whole face. Again his figure began to blur, but she desperately kept herself to see. The boy was soon looking down at her with a soft warming smile that made her arm inside her chest and flush around her cheeks. Not from the snow but something else that she couldn't identify. He soon bent down close to her face, near to her lips. His soft, warm breath could be felt. Somehow she shivered and felt something beating badly inside her chest. Feeling very flushed around her cheeks. She looked into his eyes and felt beeped inside them. She soon noticed that he smirked at her. Ever so slowly he bends down closer to her. Thumping sound could be heard inside her eardrums. She felt herself closing her eyes. This never happened to her before, till now. Before he could make contact to her. Another shadow, or shadows appeared behind the boy. They both noticed and turned to them. The boy in front of her smiled at them and soon went toward them. She felt a big aching pain inside her chest seeing him go toward them. It was like her world was falling apart. She didn't know why, but it hurt so much for her. She tried reaching out to him. The boy noticed and gave her a heartbroken face toward her. This made things worse for her. The boy bent down and then ever so slowly, beeped her so pleasantly. This began of a shock to her, then heartbroken. She closed her eyes, feeling his soft rough lips against hers. A single tear fell out of her left eye. Soon the boy let go and began to run toward the shadow people. Her heart ached seeing him run toward the shadow people. She desperately shouted for him to stop, which made it difficult for the boy. She again shouted out to him, but he didn't turn around. Again and again she shouted out toward him. She felt so broken and heartbroken. She didn't know why that is. Again she tried, but in the end the boy was among the shadow people. They all hugged and looked happy to be with him again. There was one, in particular, ran up to him that gave him a longing beat that made her ache and, betrayed. Why do I feel this way? Was all she thought while looking at them, or more particular at the boy. The boy looked back at her that made her flushed yet so broken. He gave her a sorry look, but more of a hurt and heartbroken look as well. She felt like running up to him and she did. But then something stopped her. No, someone grabbed her by the arm roughly. She looked up and noticed a handsome-looking man with brown hair, that is slicked back with one particular bang on his forehead. The man looked at her evilly that scared her to no end. He grabbed her roughly. She noticed the boy give out a horrid look toward her. He shouted her name but couldn't identify it. The shadow people equally gave out a horrid look, but not at her but at the man behind her. She tried getting out of the man's grip but it didn't help. The dream was getting more stranger and clearer than the last she had dreamt. The man roughly grabbed her away, kidnapping her away from the boy. More creatures with white masks surrounded the man to make sure the boy and the shadow people don't get any closer. The boy looked worriedly at her in his teal beautiful eyes. He looked angrily at the man and the masked creatures. Again he shouted out her name, this time more clearer. Hinata. Then everything went black. Hinata slowly opened her eyes and finds herself in the same land. The only difference was that she is in the presence of a dragon. This dragon is beautiful to her. Purple cat slit eyes looking at her with warmness and filled with regret. Just in the presence before it didn't scare her at all. In fact she felt calm and in peace. She was always the one not to judge things by their power or appearance but in their hearts and eyes. Hinata could identify the dragon was of no danger. It was actually sad, depressed, and filled with regret just looking at her. She smiled at the dragon, which made it a bit more happy to see it. It nestled closer to her, which she didn't mind. She softly and gently pet the dragon affectionately. The dragon seemed to be in content with it. Hinata smiled after noticing it more happy. After a while she was sleeping next to the dragon, feeling secured and safe with it near her. It was like her mother was still alive and was sleeping with her. Before fully going into her sleep she saw the boy again looking softly at her. He beeped her forehead and said ever so lovingly, "Good night, Hinata." This made her happily sleep with a deep feeling of warmth inside her chest. The next morning Hinata woke up with a jerk. She could feel her deep sweat around her body and forehead. At first the dreams weren't this clear and extreme, but now it is. She deeply sighed, hoping not to have that dream again. Hinata inwardly shivered remembering the brown-haired man. She tried suppressing it and head toward the shower to cool off and take off all the sweat around herself. After taking the shower she dressed up in her new clothes she bought yesterday. Just remembering that day made her depressed, but put that aside. She now wears dark lavender shirt with a black dead jacket over it that for now is unzipped. She wears black baggy black jeans and black ninja sandals. Around her neck was her necklace her mother made for her. As soon as she finished getting dressed, said she head toward the kitchen to get ready for breakfast again. Meanwhile Hitsugaya managed to get up and get ready to head toward the shower. The warm water relaxed the white-haired boy. The he just recently had made him worried and tense. Not to mention warm, heartbroken, aching, and scared. It was weird for him to feel those particular feelings. Especially that last feeling he had toward the girl in his dreams. It was similar to what he feels for Momo, yet so strongly. He dares say he felt love for the girl. She looked familiar to him. He pushed aside to get rid of it and finish his shower. He headed toward his new clothes. After taking his shower, he dressed them up. He now wears a black shirt with a kanji sign of ice written on the front of his shirt with a unzipped block. CK jacket with its collar next to his neck along with a kanji sign of dragon written on the back of his jacket. He wears the same black baggy jeans and black ninja sandals. It was comfortable to say the least. A soft knock was soon heard from his bedroom door. At least this time he dressed up before she came over. Hitsugaya opened the door to meet Hinata. "The breakfast is ready, Hitsugaya-kun," she said softly to him. He nods and gets out of his room. "All right, let's go," he said. Hi. Hinata smiled warmly at him. Hitsugaya smiled back at her, which in turn made her blush. It was the same feeling she had in the dream. She was confused as to why she's feeling that way toward Hitsugaya. Hinata shook her head and followed him to the kitchen table. Breakfast was pleasant again. Hinata thought about what they should do. After some time she remembered to see Naruto. She mentally slapped herself for not remembering to ask him whether he wants to live here or not. She looked toward Hitsugaya. Maybe I should ask Hitsugaya-kun if he wants to let Naruto Aniki move in first. I really don't want to upset him, she thought. Just the mere thought made her remember her father's stern face and the bad memories she's desperately trying to forget. Hinata shook her head out of those awful memories. Every time she remembers made her shiver in fear. "You okay?" Hitsugaya asked after noticing the slight shiver Hinata made. "Huh, oh, Anyo, hi," Hinata answered before asking, "Anyo, Hitsugaya-kun. Is it all right to have Naruto-kun live here?" Hitsugaya looked at Hinata questionably and raised an eyebrow. "I guess not. Why do you ask?" he questioned. Hiranmaru rolled his eyes. He could actually detect a hint of jealousy in Hitsugaya's voice. Even though Hitsugaya knows Hinata sees this Naruto boy like an older brother, Hiranmaru could tell that Hitsugaya still feels a bit of jealousy toward the boy. He finds that entirely amusing. Even so, Hitsugaya never accepts that he's feeling jealous about it. Hiranmaru could tell. "Anyo, I was going to ask Naruto-kun whether he wants to come live with us. I mean, he lives alone in his small apartment. He may not admit it, but he's actually lonely whenever I'm not around. Ever since his parents died when he was just a few months old, he was always overprotective of me. He didn't want to lose me because in a way I'm really like his real sister to him. Naruto-kun gets angry easily whenever the villagers, you know. I just don't want Naruto-kun to feel lonely," Hinata answered sincerely. Hitsugaya's eyes softened at her. He closed his eyes and soon said, "When are we going to ask him?" Hinata looked at him surprised before smiled happily at him. "Thank you, Hitsugaya-kun," she said happily. Again without thinking she hugged Hitsugaya across from the table. The impact caused them to fall to the floor. With a big thump, Hitsugaya hugged her around the waist to make sure she doesn't hit the floor herself. To say the least, the position they're in is quite awkward if Hinata was aware of it. Unfortunately she will in 3, 2, 1, knock, knock, knock. Hearing the door suddenly knocking made Hinata aware what she has done. She immediately gotten up with a huge blush. "Gomenasai, Hitsugaya-kun." She apologized before heading toward the door to see who it is. Hitsugaya sat up and blinked a few times before adjusting what just happened. A small pink tint was viewed from his cheeks. Hiranmaru snickered. "What's the matter, Hitsugaya? Missed the hug?" He scowled at his Zanpakuto. "Shut up, Hiranmaru," he shouted in his head. Hinata breathed in a quick pace with her heart thumping hard and fast against her chest. It confused Hinata for having such feelings for her newfound friend. Her blush was still so present started to settle down after seeing the door. She opened the door and found herself surprised seeing the person in front of her. Her eyes widened. Naruto," she whispered. The said boy gave a goofy grin that always shined her day. His eyes ever so shined in the sun's rays. "Hey, Hinata-chan, finally I found you," he said happily. Her eyes were still wide, not daring to blink. He shakily pointed at him while stuttering out, how did you know IIWW was here?" He beeped his head to the side looking like a curious fox with its ears and tail there. "I asked the old man, of course. I couldn't find you for 2 days. I gotten very worried, Hinata-chan. For a minute I thought the villagers finally gotten to you. You scared me during those 2 days, Hinata-chan. He cried out with a concerned face. Tears almost slip out of his eyes. Hinata looked at him guiltily for not telling him sooner. She hugged the boy, trying to comfort her brother. Gomen, Naruto Aniki, I didn't mean to make you upset. Gomenasai. She apologized. Naruto hugged her back, not wanting to let go. I forgive you, but please tell me right away. I was glad I asked the old man, or I might have attacked the villagers. Well, not really, but give them a huge punishment toward them, Naruto said with anger ever so present after mentioning the villagers, but sighed soon after. Hey Hinata, who is out the door? Hitsugaya asked, now looking at the two hugging. He felt anger rise up inside him but ignored the feeling. Am I interrupting? He asked. To say the least was a bit uncomfortable for Hinata. Naruto and Hitsugaya has been glaring at each for a while. Honestly, Hinata really wishes Naruto to stop being very overprotective of me. She is confused why Hitsugaya is glaring at her brother. There are always some things that she'll never understand. She sighed, watching the two glaring as if it was some sort of a contest. Finally Naruto asked the question that's been bugging him. Who's he, Hinata-chan? Not taking his eyes off of him. Hirinmaru sweatdrop at Hitsugaya's behavior but still found it very amusing. Hitsugaya, you do know that this boy is sort of like a brother to Hinata, not more than a friend, right? He questioned. Hitsugaya didn't soften his glare. Okay, maybe just a little. I know, but for some reason I can't just take him and Hinata hugging each other. It bugs me, and I don't know why. Anyo. He is Hitsugaya-kun. He's my new friend Naruto-kun. He saved me from the mob that almost found me in the forest. And he even helped me out while we were shopping. She explained. Hinata really hopes her brother won't do anything rash. Naruto looked thoughtful, then grins at Hitsugaya, who was caught off guard by that. Well, if he's your new friend Hinata-chan, then I don't see why not to accept him. After all, he didn't save you while I wasn't there. So it's nice to meet you, Hitsugaya. Naruto said with his fox-like grin, having his hand reach out to him. Hitsugaya blinked a few times before smirking at him and shook his hand. In all reality, he couldn't really dislike the blonde. There was something about him that made him feel at ease and have his guard down with him. Hinata smiled seeing all of this. For a minute she thought Naruto was going to do something very rash. She then remembered what she was going to ask him earlier. Naruto, if it is okay with you, do you want to move in with us? She asked. Naruto was at first surprised by the question but then said he'll be happy to move in. Hitsugaya smirked. He doesn't know why, but this boy easily won his friendship. Probably for always being there with Hinata. He doesn't really know, but either way he doesn't mind at all having the knucklehead moving in. In fact, things might get more interesting from now on. Hirinmaru reminded Hitsugaya to tell Naruto and Hinata about the training that he plans to do. Hitsugaya mentally nods and says that he'll tell them later. After talking for some time, Hitsugaya and Hinata helped Naruto to move in with them. Naruto loved his new home and felt very comfortable. When he noticed the training grounds, he became a happy knucklehead. Hinata giggled at her brother's antics. Hitsugaya shook his head but can't help let out a small smile. Yup, things are definitely going to get very interesting. Even though Naruto has been with Hinata and Hitsugaya for a day, he knew right away that they are both developing feelings that are more than just friends. He smirked and can't wait to see her actually plan what he can do to get them together. Naruto actually liked Hitsugaya, but most of all he liked teasing the white-haired boy. To say the least, it annoyed Hitsugaya, and much to Hirinmaru's amusement. Either way, the fox is planning and plotting ways to get the dragons together. He doesn't know why, but he has a feeling that they were made for each other. So the fox is not stopping till the dragons will be together happily. But he won't know it won't be as easy as he thinks it will be. Since there are many people who are going to tear them up apart and make things more difficult. Only time will tell whether or not they will be together. Of course, the fox is the one who never gives up on his plots. Not far off there are a group of people plotting to kidnap the dragon container. A black figure looked around the others that are in his plans. Have you found Isu Tsubasa's and the Kyuubi's containers? He asked two Pacific people in the group. A figure with red eyes with black combs nods. Isu Tsubasa's container is none other than Hinata, who was once the Hyuga heiress. The Kyuubi sealed himself in a blonde boy that I know as Naruto Uzumaki, he answered the leader. The leader looked at the man carefully. Is there a problem, Itachi? He asked the young Uchiha. As a matter of fact there is, Itachi answered. The leader raised an eyebrow. Well, then what is it? He demanded. Itachi frowned, worriedly. Although Chi was all an act he's playing, not that they know. A boy is now living with the containers. Certain of events have been changed. This boy's chakra exceeds that of the level of a senin. Something that shouldn't be in a little boy's body, especially that of a 7-year-old. Of course Hinata's and Naruto's exceptions with the demons sealed inside them. It feel like this boy will be a threat to our plans, Pain-sama. Itachi answered to Pain's demand. Pain frowned. That will be a problem. Don't do anything for now. We're not sure whether he will get in our way or not. For now don't do anything. Itachi nods. Everything is now turning and changing in the group's plans. It's all thanks to Hitsugaya's arrival that things will start to turn into something deadly or something else that even Faint doesn't know about. Hitsugaya better watch out for his friends, because now the Akatsukis might come earlier than expected to grab the thing they need. But that's not the only thing that's soon going to change. A young man is now plotting to open the warp to the dimension Hitsugaya lives and plans to beat their world's energy for his selfish reasons. Things are now changing to something dark that the light will have problems. To be continued, and thank you for watching.